You married her because you thought I was dead." Serena's voice cut through the living room, steady and sharp. No raised tone, no tremble. The words landed clean. Tyler Kings stood near the staircase, one hand gripping the rail. Her ring caught the light as her fingers tightened. She did not turn around. Across the room, Marcel Aman did not speak. His body stayed still, but his face betrayed him. The color drained. His eyes fixed on the woman he had buried years ago, now standing in his home with a child pressed close to her side. "I didn't die," Serena continued. "I disappeared." The child shifted, small fingers curling into Serena's coat. He looked up at Marcel, curious, unafraid. Tyler felt the space around her change. Not loud, not dramatic. Just final. "You told me she was gone," Tyler said quietly. Her voice held no anger, only fact. "You told me there was no one else." Marcel opened his mouth, closed it again. Serena stepped forward once, just once, enough to claim ground. "You built a life while I was raising your son." Silence followed. Thick, heavy. No one rushed to fill it. Tyler finally turned. She looked at the child. The resemblance struck hard. Same jaw, same eyes. There was no denying it. Her chest tightened, but she stayed upright. This was not a confrontation she prepared for. This was a truth arriving without permission. If someone stood in front of you and proved your marriage was built on a lie, what would you do? Comment below. Tyler didn't cry. She wouldn't give either of them that image to carry. Not Marcel, not Serena. Her heels touched the bottom step. She moved forward, calm and slow, like every step had to count now. She didn't look at Marcel when she passed him. She looked at the boy again. The child was beautiful. That wasn't the problem. The problem was how easily he fit into the home Tyler had tried to make hers. "How old is he?" she asked, stopping in front of Serena. 7, Serena said. Tyler blinked once. "Then you left on purpose." Marcel finally stepped in. "That's not fair." Tyler faced him. "No, what's not fair is building a life with someone while waiting for someone else to walk back in and erase it." Serena folded her arms, unbothered. "You were a temporary solution. You always knew that." Tyler's hands stayed by her side. Still, her voice held. "I was his wife." "For a while," Serena replied. Marcel didn't speak. Not for Tyler, not for Serena. Tyler nodded slowly. The message was clear. The living room that once felt like shelter now felt like a stage, and she was the only one not reading from a script. She didn't storm out. She turned around, walked back up the stairs, and left her ring on the table at the top. Not because she was weak, because silence sometimes speaks louder than defense. 3 years earlier, the cathedral was beautiful, but it didn't belong to her. Tyler walked down the aisle alone. No father, no brother, no one offering her hand to another man. Only cameras and polite stares. Her father had died with more debt than dignity. The king's family name had been quietly auctioned to the highest bidder. Marcel Aman hadn't needed to offer love. He offered a solution. Marriage would cancel the debt. The proposal came in a meeting room, not on one knee. Tyler signed her name beside his without hesitation. The wedding day came with designer lace, flawless makeup, and a groom who didn't flinch when she reached him. Marcel's voice stayed even during his vows. Not cold, just measured, controlled. When he slipped the ring on her finger, his hand brushed hers for barely a second. Long enough to be courteous, not long enough to feel like promise. Tyler smiled when expected, tilted her head for photos, greeted guests who didn't know her name. Inside, she was quiet, not numb, not devastated, just aware. This marriage wasn't about her. It was about what she owed. When they arrived at his townhouse that night, glass, steel, expensive silence, Marcel walked ahead and opened the door without looking back. She stepped in behind him, knowing exactly what she had become. A solution, in a silk dress. Marcel didn't talk in his sleep, but he breathed like a man carrying memory. Tyler learned the rhythm of his nights. when his shoulders locked, when his chest held still too long, when the air between them felt occupied by something unsaid. It started small, the locked door to his study, the way his eyes softened at silence, the name that slipped from a phone call once, Serena. She didn't ask. She watched. Then one day, while dusting the study bookshelf, she found it. Tucked behind finance journals, a leather sketchbook. Dark, slim, the name was etched into the corner, Serena. She opened it. The drawings weren't posed. They were moments. A hand resting on another, a woman mid-laugh, a figure leaning into sunlight. Love didn't have to be labeled. It lived in those lines. Tyler closed the book and placed it back carefully. She didn't mention it, didn't accuse, didn't confront, because she already knew. She had married a man in mourning, and she would never be louder than the silence Serena left behind. Tyler never begged for space in his life. She made one for herself, quietly. While Marcel traveled, she worked. As a nanny, she found normalcy, packing lunches, folding clothes, helping with homework. The boy she cared for, Santon, once looked up at her during dinner and said, "You only smile at night when no one's watching." She had paused, then smiled for real. Marcel noticed the difference, not all at once, but enough. He began watching her from the hallway when she worked with Santan, not intrusively, just present. Tyler didn't seek him out, didn't force conversation. When they did speak, she listened more than she reacted. One evening, a thunderstorm hit the city. Power dropped. The house dimmed. They lit candles, ate by flickering light. The room felt warmer, not from heat, but from the lack of performance. "You don't act like someone who married for advantage," Marcel said over grilled fish and silence. Tyler looked at him without blinking. "Then stop treating me like I did." The words didn't accuse. They clarified. That night, he reached for her, not with entitlement, but with care. She didn't retreat. She didn't hurry. They met in the middle. The silence between them softened, and for the first time since they married, they didn't sleep on opposite sides of the bed. 3 weeks later, she saw 2 lines on a pregnancy test. Morning light spilled across the kitchen when she told him. His hand hovered over her belly, then rested gently. In that moment, he saw her. Then Serena came back. The knock wasn't loud. It was precise. 3 soft raps. A pause. 1 final knock. Tyler opened the front door expecting a package. A courier. She wasn't expecting Serena. She stood there, taller than the memory, thinner than the photos, but unmistakable. Her coat was buttoned neatly to the collar. Her face was clean, makeup quiet. Her hair, long and braided down one shoulder, didn't move in the breeze. But it was the child beside her that froze Tyler. A boy, maybe 7, dressed neatly in a navy sweater and grey pants. His hand wrapped loosely around Serena's. His eyes didn't dart. He looked up at Tyler like she was the one interrupting. "Marcel, home?" Serena asked. Tyler didn't answer right away. Her grip tightened on the edge of the door. She didn't step back. "You're—" The word didn't finish itself. "Alive?" Serena offered. "Yes." Her tone was smooth, like this was a normal day, like years hadn't passed since the funeral. Tyler slowly stepped aside, not out of welcome, out of instinct. Serena entered first. The boy followed without hesitation. The living room didn't react. No storm, no glass shattered. Only Marcel, who stood near the fireplace, flipping through a report, looked up and stopped breathing. His folder dropped to the floor. The boy took a step forward, stared at Marcel for a long moment. Serena smiled slightly. "Money. Say hello to your father." Marcel didn't speak. His eyes never left the child. Tyler moved to the edge of the room, her back to the window. Her heart thudded, but her face didn't change. Tyler stood behind the armrest of the sofa. She didn't sit. The child, Manny, walked around like he'd been there before, like this wasn't new to him. Marcel slowly bent down and picked up the folder he'd dropped. His hands trembled once, but he forced stillness back into them. Serena removed her coat and laid it across the nearest chair like it belonged there. "I wasn't kidnapped," she said, answering no question. "I wasn't lost. I chose to disappear. It was the only way to protect myself. And him." Marcel opened his mouth but didn't speak. Tyler watched him. She memorized his silence. It wasn't shock. It was guilt. She had lived in that silence before. The silence after their wedding vows, when his hand left hers too fast. The silence in the townhouse each night when he rolled to his side of the bed. The silence when she found the name Serena pressed into the leather of a sketchbook. Tyler had learned to live without answers. She had learned not to ask questions that didn't change outcomes. Her endurance hadn't been loud. It had been steady. And now, watching Serena walk back into their home, her silence returned, not as surrender, but as proof. She had carried his name without ever holding his heart. Serena ran. Serena returned. Tyler stayed. That was the difference. Still, Marcel didn't turn to her. Not once. Not to say, "I didn't know." Not to say, "I'm sorry." Not to say anything. Serena sat. Manny leaned into her side. Tyler took a quiet breath. She wouldn't fall apart. Not in front of them. She had survived too much in silence to let a ghost with a child shake her now. Marcel didn't sit. He didn't blink much either. He stood near the edge of the fireplace, like a man trying to remember how to breathe. His gaze moved between Serena and Manny, back to Serena, then to Tyler. But not once did he hold Tyler's eyes. Serena crossed one leg over the other, calm, like she had never vanished, like she hadn't missed a funeral held in her name. "Manny's yours," she said plainly. "I didn't come to ask. I came to tell you." The boy looked up again, curiosity flickering, but no fear. Tyler wanted to move, but her body didn't answer. Marcel finally spoke. Where were you?" Serena shrugged. "Gone. Safe. That's all you need to know for now. You let me think you were—" He couldn't finish. Serena stood. "I let you move on." Her words landed hard. They weren't cruel. They were surgical. Marcel took one step forward and stopped. He looked down at Manny. The resemblance was clear. It crushed every doubt before it could form. Tyler saw it happen. Saw her husband, the man she had cooked for, waited for, slept beside, shift his body toward the past. She watched his chest rise once. His hand lowered slightly, reaching for Manny. That was when she left the room. No drama, no tearful exit. Just steps, deliberate, measured. Her breath stayed quiet as she climbed the stairs. No one followed, because no one noticed she had gone. Tyler reached the bedroom without stumbling. She didn't lean on the wall, didn't pause in the hallway. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The townhouse still smelled like lemon and wood polish. The same scent she'd once told herself meant home. Now it felt like a showroom. Perfect, untouched, false. She walked to the dresser, opened the top drawer, and took out the small leather case, the one that held her wedding ring when she wasn't wearing it. She didn't open it. Instead, she slipped the ring off her finger and placed it gently on top. No note, no words. The sound of voices downstairs drifted faintly through the walls. Serena's even tone, Marcel's questions turning brittle. Tyler didn't care about answers anymore. She had worn that ring through silence, through waiting, through nights of pretending presence was enough. She had kissed him with hope and carried his child with faith. And when she lost the baby, quietly, painfully, she mourned alone. Even that hadn't moved him. Not really. Now Serena had returned, with proof of the life he wanted more than the one he had. Tyler had no space left to compete. She reached for her overnight bag. She didn't pack in anger. She packed like someone who knew what to leave behind. Downstairs, the past was trying to reclaim its place. Up here, she was reclaiming hers. The ring sat still, gleaming, accusing nothing, explaining everything. The office smelled like cologne, paper, and power. Tyler didn't sit when they offered the chair. She stood across the table from the man who once pulled her father out of a courtroom scandal. Marcel Aman, clean-cut, impossibly calm. He didn't smile when he spoke. He stated, as if emotion would disrupt efficiency. "Your father owes this firm $7 million, the senior partner said. He has no assets left, no way to repay. Tyler nodded. She didn't flinch. A thin file slid across the table. Contracts. One of them was a marriage agreement. She didn't see roses or rings. She saw terms, conditions, signatures. "The marriage will settle the account," the partner continued. "You will be protected, your name cleared. The debt disappears quietly." Marcel didn't interrupt. He watched her, not cruelly, just patiently. Tyler glanced once at the line where her father's signature had stopped short, the line where her own name was needed now. She took the pen and signed, not because she was naive, but because she had no illusions left. Her father had gambled the last of his name. She was all that remained. There was no proposal, no champagne, no kneeling, only silence. And then Marcel's voice, "We'll hold the ceremony in 3 weeks. I'll handle the arrangements." It wasn't cold. It was business. Tyler left the office that day with no ring on her finger, but the wait had already begun. She walked back to her apartment, past a row of bridal shops. She didn't stop to look in any window, because this wasn't a wedding. It was a trade, and she knew her worth, measured in debt and sacrifice. The cathedral echoed, not from sound, but from absence. Tyler adjusted her veil in the back hallway mirror. Her makeup was flawless. Her dress had no wrinkles, but the silence in the bridal room was louder than any orchestra. There was no bridesmaid adjusting her train, no mother checking her lipstick, no father waiting with an arm to offer. She stepped into the hallway alone. A staff member opened the double doors. The organ began. Whispers swirled as she entered, not about beauty, about contracts, about names, about money. She didn't focus on the guests. She focused on her steps, each one deliberate, controlled. Marcel stood at the altar, tall and unreadable. His charcoal suit looked tailored into his skin, his hands folded in front of him. His eyes never wavered. She reached him. He didn't take her hand. The officiant began. There were no pauses in the vows, no forgotten lines. Tyler said hers without a tremble. Marcel spoke his like he was reading from a prepared memo. When he placed the ring on her finger, his hand lingered for exactly 1 second. Enough for formality, not enough for meaning. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She nodded. Applause rose when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Marcel turned, offered her his arm. She took it. They walked out together, still strangers. Outside, cameras flashed. Inside, Tyler whispered to herself, "This is what survival looks like." There was no kiss, no whispered promise, only a contract fulfilled. The car ride from the cathedral to the townhouse was quiet. No music, no small talk. Marcel answered one call about a property bid. Then silence. When they pulled up to the waterfront property, Tyler's breath caught. The house was all glass and steel. Beautiful. Expensive. Sharp. But it didn't look lived in. It looked staged. Marcel stepped out first and opened her door. Polite. Efficient. No warmth. Inside, the floors gleamed. Every surface was perfect. Minimalist furniture, no photos, no personal touches. "This is yours now," he said, placing a single key on the kitchen island. She nodded. "Thank you." He walked her through the house like a realtor. Guest bedrooms, study, master suite. When he opened the door to their shared room, Tyler stepped in first. The bed was wide, immaculate, too wide. He didn't say anything else. "I'll let you settle in," Marcel said. He left the room. She stood there for a long moment before sitting on the edge of the bed. Her hands rested in her lap. Her ring caught the overhead light. She looked around. No sign of a wife's presence. No drawer left for her. no folded towel waiting on the bed. She was here, but not expected. Later that night, they ate dinner at opposite ends of the table. Conversation was brief. When they turned off the lights, they lay on opposite sides of the mattress, not touching, not talking, only breathing. Tyler stared at the ceiling. She wasn't scared. She wasn't sad. She was awake. In every way. This wasn't a beginning. This was containment. It started with the door that never opened. The study stayed locked. Always. Marcel never said why, never offered a reason. One morning, while cleaning the hallway shelves, Tyler noticed a gap behind the finance journals. A leather book, wedged between ledgers. She reached for it, fingers brushing smooth leather, no dust, recently touched. She didn't plan to open it. But something made her pause. The name on the corner of the cover, etched in faded gold, wasn't hers. Serena. She stood still. The house was silent. Marcel had already left for the office. Tyler opened the book slowly. No spreadsheets, no notes. Drawings, ink sketches, charcoal outlines, not of objects, of moments. A hand resting on another's back. A smile captured mid-laugh. A silhouette at a window, shoulders relaxed. Not posed, lived. Pages turned like memories she was never meant to see. She closed the book carefully. Slid it back. She didn't mention it. Not that night. Not ever. But from that moment forward, she knew there was someone else. Not present, but never gone. Serena didn't haunt the house like a ghost. She framed the silence. Tyler moved differently after that. Not bitter, not broken. She cooked. She worked. She answered when spoken to. She stayed upright, because now she understood she wasn't replacing anyone. She was simply filling a space until it was no longer needed. Tyler never missed a day with Santan. The boy's parents traveled often, and their lakefront home in Evanston became a second routine for her. There, she wasn't Mrs. Aman. She was Miss Tyler, and that name came with freedom. No contracts, no cold glances, just breakfast cereal, Lego pieces on the floor, and a 7-year-old who asked too many questions. "Do you like your house?" Santan asked one day as she zipped up his jacket. She paused. "It's quiet." "That's not what I asked," he replied. Tyler smiled, the kind that softened only one corner of her mouth. "Then no, not always." Santan shrugged. "I wouldn't like it either. Big houses get lonely." She liked how honest he was. No games, no guessing. Each morning she showed up at 8. Each evening she left before dinner. Santan always tried to keep her longer. "I'm not your mom," she reminded him once. He looked at her and said, "You act like someone who cares." That's better sometimes. The words stayed with her longer than they should have, because in Marcel's house, no one spoke that way. There, she moved like a guest with a permanent key. But here, in a home that wasn't hers, she felt more human. She didn't wear makeup to Santan's house. She didn't monitor her tone. She told jokes. She listened to music. She laughed, and Marcel noticed. He showed up early for a pickup once, watched from the hallway, watched her fix a snack while Santan told her about his science project. Tyler didn't notice him watching, but Marcel saw something he didn't recognize. Not performance, not patience, something warmer. And it bothered him that it didn't belong to him. Marcel didn't know when he started noticing. Maybe it was the way Tyler moved in the kitchen, calm, precise, without waiting for thanks. Maybe it was how she smiled at staff but never flirted, how she always asked if he'd eaten but never pressed when he hadn't. She never sought his attention, and somehow that drew his. She never asked about his schedule, his meetings, or the cities he flew to. She simply noted his flight times and left hot food on the counter when he returned. He once asked her if she needed anything. She said, "No, thank you," and meant it. She didn't chase warmth. She brought it with her. That disturbed Marcel more than he admitted. He had known performance before. Women who complimented his suits, who smiled too wide when they asked about his empire. Tyler never did. One night, he passed her study and heard soft humming. She was sitting cross-legged on the rug, sorting through Santan's drawings for the week. She didn't see him, but she smiled at one sketch, just a stick figure with glasses and big hair labeled Miss T. She set it aside like it was gold. Marcel stood there longer than he should have. That night, he couldn't sleep, not because he was haunted, but because something quiet had shifted. He couldn't tell if it was her or him. The wind came fast. By evening, it pushed against the windows like a warning. Power flickered just before dinner. Then darkness settled in. Marcel lit 2 candles. Tyler brought out sandwiches and soup from the fridge. Neither said much as they sat at the kitchen island, faces glowing under soft flame. There were no devices, no background noise, just flickering light and steady breaths. Tyler ate in silence. Marcel watched her, unsure why her calm unsettled him. "You don't act like someone who married for advantage," he said quietly. Tyler met his eyes. "Then stop treating me like I did." She didn't blink. Her words didn't accuse, they anchored. Marcel sat back, looked at her differently, not with curiosity, with conflict. He had offered her a name, a house, and a life. But he had never once asked who she was before all of that. She took a slow sip of water, then cleared their plates. The moment didn't stretch, it settled. When he reached out to take the dish from her hands, their fingers touched. It was the first time he didn't pull away first. And she didn't flinch. No rush, no assumptions. They stood close, side by side, shadows dancing behind them. Nothing else happened that night, but something had begun. Marcel didn't touch her again for a week, but the silence between them changed. It wasn't cold anymore. It listened. They moved through the house like people who had finally seen one another. Not fully, not clearly, but enough. Tyler didn't adjust her behavior. She still packed Santan's snacks, still left meals covered in foil. But now, when Marcel passed her in the hallway, he paused, even if only for a second. Once, he asked how her day was, then stayed long enough to hear the answer. Tyler didn't push. She never had. But the air shifted. Even the staff noticed. She smiled once in front of him, without caution. And that was when Marcel realized something. He trusted her, not because of her silence, but because she never used it to punish him. Weeks later, Tyler stared at 2 pink lines on a stick. The bathroom light buzzed overhead. Her hands trembled, but her face stayed still. She stood there a long time. Then, she walked out, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. When Marcel came downstairs, freshly shaved and half distracted, she said it softly, "I'm pregnant." He stopped mid-step. His mouth parted, but no words came. Then he walked over, slowly. His hand hovered above her stomach, unsure, almost afraid. Then he rested it there, his voice low. "You're sure?" She nodded. He looked at her like he hadn't before, not as the woman who signed the contract, as the woman who might give him something real. She let him hope. But neither of them saw the door that was already on its way back open. The knock came early. Marcel was in the shower. Tyler had just placed toast in the toaster. She opened the door with a kitchen towel still over her shoulder. There was no storm, no drama, just Serena, standing on the porch with a child in a single suitcase. Alive, whole, dressed like she had never vanished. Tyler's hands froze on the doorknob. Serena didn't wait to be invited. "I need to speak with Marcel." The boy at her side clung to her coat. His eyes scanned the entryway, then landed on Tyler. He didn't speak. Tyler didn't move. "You're not going to let me in?" Serena asked, her tone calm. Not sharp, not pleading, just confident. Tyler stepped back slowly. Not because she welcomed her, because she understood something. Serena hadn't come to ask. She had come to resume. Serena walked in like she remembered where everything was. The boy followed. Tyler stood by the doorway, heart locked behind her ribs. Marcel stepped into the room moments later, hair damp, sleeves rolled up. His eyes met Serena's, and the world stopped. He said nothing, not a question, not a denial. He walked to her, looked down at the child. His hand didn't tremble this time when it reached for the boy's shoulder. Serena whispered, "His name is Manny." Tyler watched it happen, the moment love rewrote loyalty, and she knew. Whatever they had just begun had already ended. Serena didn't ask where to stay. She headed straight to the guest wing. The same guest wing Tyler had once used before being moved into the main bedroom after 6 months of marriage. Now she watched the woman Marcel mourned unpack with practiced ease. Manny ran toward the hallway with a familiarity that didn't need explanation. He had never been here before, but his feet knew where to land. Tyler stood in the kitchen, one hand resting on the marble counter, barely breathing. Marcel hadn't followed Serena. He remained in the living room, but his body leaned toward the hallway. His eyes flicked to Tyler once. Quick, like a reminder, not a connection. She turned away. That night, Serena sat across from Marcel at dinner. She told stories in fragments, places she'd hidden, people who'd helped, words that sounded like truth but never fully explained anything. Tyler served the food. Quietly, she wasn't asked to sit, and she didn't force herself into the conversation. She watched Marcel laugh at something Serena said, something about Manny's handwriting. It was the first time she had seen him laugh without restraint. The sound pressed into her chest like pressure, not pain. Manny said he liked the house, said it felt safe. Serena touched Marcel's wrist lightly. He didn't pull back. Tyler stood, took her plate to the sink, and left the room. Not angry, just done. The bleeding started 3 days after Serena returned. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, inevitable. Tyler sat on the edge of the bathtub, fingers pressed against the cold porcelain, heartbeat pounding between her ears. She knew what it meant. She didn't call Marcel. He was in the courtyard with Serena and Manny, showing the boy the koi pond. Tyler heard their voices through the open windows. Laughter, instructions. Serena calling Marcel by name like no time had passed. She folded over herself, wrapped her arms around her middle, and breathed through it. It wasn't the physical pain that broke her. It was the silence. She had started this pregnancy with a flicker of hope. Maybe. Now it ended with no witness. By nightfall, she lay on the couch in the guest den, body heavy, soul still. Marcel knocked once before stepping in. "I haven't seen you," he said. "You okay?" She looked up, slow. Her eyes were blank. "I lost the baby," she said flatly. The words didn't rise. They landed. His face shifted. Guilt, confusion, something else. He stepped forward. "Why didn't you say anything?" Tyler blinked. "You've been occupied." He didn't argue. He didn't offer comfort. Not because he didn't care, because he didn't know how. The room felt small. Marcel stayed 1 minute longer, then left. No promise. No return. Tyler closed her eyes, and something inside her closed with them. Dawn hadn't fully broken when Tyler zipped her bag. No notes. No drawn-out farewell. Just essentials. 1 suitcase. She folded her clothes neatly, placing each item with the calm of someone who'd already left emotionally days before. The house was quiet. Even Serena slept soundly in the guest wing. Marcel's door was slightly ajar. She didn't look in. He had been choosing that direction since the first knock on the door. She was simply removing herself from the equation. As she walked through the hallway, the walls didn't echo her steps. She passed the kitchen, paused by the countertop. Her hand touched the place where she once told him they were expecting. She touched nothing else. At the front door, she hesitated only once. Not for doubt. For memory. Then she reached into her coat pocket, pulled out the same small leather ring case she once stored in the dresser, and set it on the entry table. It didn't make a sound when it landed. She stepped outside. No one followed. No one noticed. Yet. But when they did, they wouldn't find a broken woman. They'd find silence. And that silence would say everything. The nameplate on the office door read, Tyler Kings and Associates, Downtown Chicago, 20th floor, glass walls, clean lines, sharp focus. The receptionist stood as Tyler entered. Boardroom's ready, ma'am. Tyler nodded once, stepped out of her heels, and switched into flats before walking toward the meeting. She no longer moved to please. She moved to command. 3 years had passed. In that time, she uncovered a hidden inheritance from her mother's side, land in southern Michigan, undervalued but full of potential. She sold it strategically, built a consultancy around negotiation and conflict resolution. Her name, once attached to scandal, now meant leverage. She didn't speak often in press, but when she did, people listened. And beside her, every step of the way, was Santan. Taller now, smarter. He called her Tyler in public, but at home, Mum slipped through sometimes. He knew the truth. Not every detail, but enough. He had lived through her grief, been there the day she collapsed in the hallway and whispered goodbye to a life no one saw her lose. Now, he walked beside her like he belonged, because he did. They weren't perfect, but they were solid. That morning, her assistant entered with a stack of documents. There's a gala tonight, Royce Enterprises. You were invited directly by the new chair. Tyler didn't blink. Marcel. She circled the event name with her pen, then looked out at the city. She didn't plan to cause a scene. She planned to wear her name with grace, and let her presence ask the only question that mattered. Do you see me now? The gala shimmered under soft gold lighting. Chicago's elite filled the ballroom, names with legacy, faces with polish. Marcel stood near the stage, mid-conversation with investors, suit crisp, voice steady. He didn't see her at first. Tyler entered through the side corridor, not the grand staircase. She wore a tailored black jumpsuit, no jewelry except a small gold pin on her collar. Her hair was swept back, sharp and clean. She wasn't looking for him. She was reading the room. She saw Serena first. Across the floor, same posture, same careful eyes, a glass of wine in hand, no child this time. Then Marcel turned, and he stopped mid-sentence. His eyes found her like they were wired to. The space between them filled instantly, not with emotion, but with realization. Tyler didn't pause. She moved to the bar, ordered water, and greeted a board member with a smile that landed, then moved on. She didn't wait for anyone to approach her, but they did, one executive, then another. She shook hands. She listened. She offered perspective. Marcel stepped closer, finally, not fast, but deliberate. Tyler. She turned slowly. Marcel. He looked at her the way someone looks at something they forgot they lost, then remembered they never deserved. You look, well, I am. He nodded once, eyes flicking to the small gold pin. You built something. I rebuilt, she corrected, and not from scratch. From what you left behind. He had no reply. Before he could speak again, Santan appeared at her side. Taller now, confident. Marcel looked at the boy. His face shifted. Recognition burned quiet. Santan looked him in the eye and said simply, "Hello." No smile, no explanation. And for the first time in Marcel's life, silence made him feel small. The invitation had said networking, but Marcel never imagined truth would come wearing a legal seal. 2 days after the gala, a document arrived at his office, couriered, not emailed, stamped, dated, precise. It was a paternity filing, requested by Tyler Kings, not out of spite, not even to claim anything, just confirmation, for clarity. Inside the envelope, copies of school medical forms, hospital records, and a notarized statement from Tyler detailing dates, timelines, and gaps. Attached was Santan's birth certificate, no father's name. But the math was plain. Marcel's assistant brought it to his desk. It's been reviewed by legal. It's legitimate. Marcel stared at the page. His eyes caught on one line, child conceived during lawful marriage to Marcel Amon. He sat back in his chair, hands on the armrests, No defense rose. Serena's voice rang in his memory. I left to protect money. You were in danger. But the danger was never explained. No police records, no threats logged, no evidence. Her story had gaps. Her return had been perfectly timed. Her control over the narrative, seamless. Tyler had never pressed, never exposed, until now. And even now, she didn't come with rage. She came with proof. Proof that spoke softly but hit with weight. His hand drifted toward the ring drawer in his desk. Empty now. What he'd once ignored was now the only thing demanding attention. And it didn't shout, it simply waited. She didn't ask for a meeting. She didn't need one. Marcel walked into her firm's lobby without warning, security badge clipped to his blazer like it gave him purpose. Tyler stepped out of a meeting room, papers in one hand, tablet in the other. She didn't look surprised to see him. 5 minutes? He asked. She gestured toward the small glass office at the corner. Close the door behind you. He sat. She didn't. He studied her. Clear voice on the phone, short instructions to her assistant, polite goodbye. Then her eyes turned to him. I got your documents, he began. She nodded once. They're accurate. Checked 3 times, she replied. Every line. He lowered his gaze. You should have told me. I did, she said. You just weren't listening. He leaned forward slightly. I didn't know how to handle what happened. I'm not here for your apology, Marcel. That stopped him. She walked to the window, arms crossed, back tall. You didn't trust me when it mattered. You believed a story without questions. You let me disappear under your roof. He stood now, slowly. I thought she died. You knew that. I did, she replied, and I still stayed, still carried you, still protected what we had, even when you refused to admit we had anything real. He didn't interrupt again. Tyler turned to him, voice level. You never trusted me, she said. So you lost me. He closed his eyes for 1 second, but when he opened them, she was already walking away. No drama, no goodbye, just a truth left hanging, one that didn't need to be repeated. The house felt smaller, not because space had changed, but because air did. Serena moved through rooms like she had designed them. Manny's shoes sat in the entryway now. His jacket hung beside Marcel's. Tyler noticed the shift before it was spoken. She no longer received questions, only updates. Serena needs the car this afternoon. Manny's doctor appointment is scheduled. There's dinner already made in the guest wing. Tyler hadn't been asked where she'd be. No one asked what she needed. The staff who once looked to her for instructions now looked to Serena. Even the housekeeper called Serena ma'am. Marcel didn't correct it. He didn't notice when Tyler moved her books from the master room to the hallway shelf. He didn't ask why her toiletries were no longer in the bathroom drawer. He was always busy, always adjusting, always leaning toward the noise Serena brought. Tyler's presence didn't compete. She withdrew instead. Not with bitterness, with clarity. She started eating breakfast earlier, before the rest of the house stirred. She declined evening plans, stopped leaving notes. She lived like a tenant. Marcel once passed her in the hallway and said, "Did you get the new schedule?" She nodded. That was all. He didn't notice the pause in her reply. Didn't realize she had already left the room before he finished his sentence. The silence wasn't cold. It was a decision, one no one saw being made. Serena didn't lie. She simply spoke with confidence, enough to make hesitation look like guilt. She folded her version of events into conversations effortlessly. When I left, I thought Marcel would hold on a little longer. I didn't expect him to move on. I guess when grief gets heavy, people settle for what's near. She must have meant well, but she didn't know him like I did. None of it was said to Tyler. Always near her, always within earshot. The tone stayed soft. The message never did. Marcel rarely responded. But his silence didn't protect Tyler. It confirmed Serena's position. Each day, Tyler found her role further erased. Serena began organizing events at the house. Dinners, charity planning, school enrollment visits. Tyler's seat at the table disappeared slowly. Not removed, just unassigned. She watched it happen. One afternoon, she overheard Serena speaking on the phone. "Yes, I'm staying with Marcel, of course. It's only right, after everything we've been through. Everything." It was a word loaded with implication. Tyler stood outside that room with a glass of water in her hand, cold, trembling, but she never entered. Serena hung up, walked past Tyler in the hallway, paused just enough to say, "I'm sure you understand how complicated this all is." Tyler met her eyes, said nothing, because anything she said would sound like defense, and she wasn't defending herself in a place where she wasn't even acknowledged. She wasn't being argued with. She was being rewritten. The pain didn't arrive all at once. It started as a dull pressure low in her body, a warning she tried to ignore while folding laundry in the guest room. She sat down on the edge of the bed, waited for it to pass. It didn't. Tyler locked the door. Not out of fear, out of habit. She sat on the bathroom floor with her back against the tub, counting her breaths. The house moved around her. Footsteps in the hallway. A door closing. Serena's voice drifting from downstairs. No one knocked. She knew before the doctor said anything. She didn't need confirmation. She had learned her body well enough to recognize when something let go. At the clinic, the nurse spoke gently, offered tissues, asked if someone was on the way. Tyler shook her head. No. She signed the discharge form herself, walked out alone, sat in her car for a long time before turning the key. When she returned home, dinner was already set in the guest wing. Laughter floated down the hall. Manny telling a story. Serena correcting him softly. Marcel listening. Tyler went upstairs instead. She lay on the bed fully dressed, one hand resting over her stomach. Not to hold on, just to acknowledge what had been there. She didn't tell Marcel. Not because she wanted to punish him, because she already knew how the moment would go. Confusion, guilt, a brief pause. Then, attention pulled elsewhere. She wasn't willing to lose something else in front of him. That night, she cried quietly. No sound, no shaking. Tears slid into her hairline and dried there. By morning, she was empty. Not broken. Empty. And emptiness gave her clarity. The sky was still grey when Tyler zipped her bag. No alarm rang. No phone buzzed. She had been awake long before dawn, staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow rhythm of a house that no longer held her. She moved quietly, not to hide, to avoid interruption. Her clothes were folded with care, not everything, only what belonged to her. She left behind the dresses Marcel liked, the shoes bought for events she never chose. In the bathroom, she washed her face and studied her reflection. Her eyes looked clear. Tired, but clear. She didn't go to the master bedroom. There was nothing there for her anymore. In the hallway, she paused once, not from doubt, from memory. The nights she waited, the mornings she cooked, the hope she carried without proof. She walked downstairs. The house was still. Serena's door remained closed. Manny's backpack sat by the entryway, ready for school. Marcel's office light was off. Tyler stepped into the kitchen and set her keys on the counter. Then she reached into her coat pocket and placed the ring beside them. It didn't roll. It didn't shine. It simply rested. No note explained it. None was needed. She picked up her bag and opened the front door. Cool air met her face. She didn't look back. By the time the house woke, she would be gone. And when Marcel noticed the silence where she once stood, it would be too late to ask when she decided to leave. Because she had been leaving for a long time, this was only the moment her body followed. The front page of the Chicago Business Quarterly featured a headline in bold, "Tyler Kings makes power move in city property dispute." Marcel stared at the article from behind his desk. A photo showed her outside a courthouse, shoulders squared, heels planted, chin slightly lifted. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Her presence had changed. It had been 3 years. 3 years since she left without a message. 3 years since the silence she wore turned into strength. Her name now appeared on contracts, boards, Foundations. Not attached to his. Not attached to anyone's. Just hers. Marcel folded the paper. At home, Serena had grown distant. They'd never officially remarried. Mani lived with them, but the closeness Marcel imagined faded quickly. Too many things left unspoken. Too many doubts that never got addressed. And Tyler, she hadn't called. Not once. But she didn't need to. Her moves were loud enough. Her firm now consulted on conflict mediation for corporations across the Midwest. Her story had spread without her telling it. People admired her discretion, her restraint. She had stepped out of the shadow of a man's reputation and built something from her own. And now, everywhere he turned, her name appeared again. Not as a reminder of loss, as proof of what it looks like when someone chooses to live with dignity. The conference was held at the Hyatt Regency downtown. Full ballroom, over 300 attendees. Tyler didn't use notes. She stood center stage in front of executives, founders, and young professionals hungry for shortcuts. She gave them something better, clarity. When I started, she said, I didn't have investors, I didn't have backing, I had silence. But silence doesn't mean weakness. It can mean clarity. Marcel sat in the back row. No one noticed him. He wore no badge. Said nothing. He hadn't planned to come. But when he saw her name on the program, Tyler King's keynote speaker, he changed his schedule. She didn't scan the room. Didn't look for him. Because she didn't expect him anymore. On stage, she continued. There was a time I thought being chosen meant being valued. But I learned something. The people who truly value you never make you feel like a placeholder. The room fell quiet. Marcel's hands locked together in his lap. She closed with a steady breath. Power isn't volume. It's knowing you no longer need to explain why you left. Applause followed. Long. Earned. She stepped down without pause, thanked the host, and walked toward the exit. Marcel stood, hesitated, then followed. Tyler. She turned halfway. Her expression didn't change. Marcel. He swallowed. You were incredible. I always was, she replied. You just never stayed long enough to notice. He didn't try to stop her when she walked away, because this time she didn't leave anything behind. Santan was 15 now, taller than Tyler by a head, shoulders squared like he was still learning how much space he could take up. He waited for her outside the building, backpack slung low, headphones around his neck. You were sharp in there, he said as she walked up. Tyler smiled. You watched the whole thing? Every word, he said. You didn't even flinch. They walked down the sidewalk together, weaving past suits and phones and coffee cups. I used to flinch all the time, she admitted. Yeah, Santan said, but never when anyone was looking. He said it without pity, without weight, just memory. They stopped at the curb. She glanced sideways. You still want to major in architecture? He nodded. I want to build things that last. She touched his shoulder. Good. Then start with your name. He looked at her. What do you mean? Make sure when people say it, they think of something honest. They crossed the street. Marcel had once called Santan sharp. Once, years ago. But it was Tyler who showed up at parent-teacher meetings. Tyler who held him after nightmares. Tyler who taught him what quiet strength looked like. Now, when he walked beside her, it wasn't as a child clinging to comfort. It was as someone who had learned how to stay, by watching her do it alone. Marcel checked his phone between meetings. 3 missed calls. 1 from legal, 2 from press. 1 text. From a number he still knew by heart. Tyler King's. The message was short. We need to talk. Just us. One last time. He stared at it. Read it again. She hadn't reached out in years, not after the conference, not after the paternity filing, not even when Santan's name started appearing in academic award circles. He waited 5 minutes before replying. Where? She answered seconds later. Somewhere neutral. You choose. Marcel cancelled the rest of his day. That evening, he sat across from her at a quiet bistro tucked off a side street near River North. No cameras. No staff. She arrived exactly on time. No makeup, no performance. She didn't shake his hand, didn't wait for small talk. "I'm not here to reopen anything," she said. "I just want it said clearly, with no one else in the room." He nodded. "I'm listening." She looked him in the eye. Steady. "I forgave you a long time ago, but I never got to say it." He blinked. "You forgave me?" "Yes. But that doesn't mean I want you back." He lowered his gaze. "I understand." She finished her water, stood, and left her half of the bill on the table. Before leaving, she paused beside him. "You don't owe me anything now. Just don't make the same mistake with the next person who chooses you." Then she walked out. No drama, no backward glance, only clarity. The envelope landed on Marcel's desk with a firm thud. Legal had labeled it confidential. Inside, timestamps, phone logs, international travel records, and a notarized statement from a woman Serena once stayed with overseas. Marcel flipped through each page slowly. Serena's timeline, her claimed years in hiding, began to fall apart. She said she'd been moving constantly, too afraid to stay in one place. But the files showed year-long leases under her name, photos from social events, receipts for spa treatments, not shelters. She hadn't been surviving, she had been building a different life. Without him, one record stood out. A signed statement from a pediatrician in New York, dated just 6 months after Serena's disappearance. Marcel's jaw clenched. That child had been under medical care long before Serena ever claimed to be back in the country. He buzzed his assistant. "Get Serena in here." 10 minutes later, she entered, confident, casual. "What's this?" she asked, flipping through the folder without urgency. Marcel watched her. "You lied." She looked up, unbothered. "About what, exactly?" "You said you were in hiding, said Marnie needed protection, that you had no contact with anyone." Serena tilted her head. "Does it matter now?" Marcel didn't answer, because it did, and they both knew it. The test arrived in a plain white envelope. No urgency, no seal, just a name, a number, and one result. Marcel opened it at home, alone in his office. The first line was clinical, paternity probability 99.98%. He read it 3 times, not because he doubted the result, because it forced him to face the truth he'd avoided. Santan was his son, not Manny. Not the boy Serena brought home with a well-rehearsed smile. Not the child he had instinctively accepted without question. Santan. The quiet one. The boy who never asked to belong but always acted like someone who did. Marcel leaned back in his chair, pressed his fingers to his temple. The memory hit, Santan's words during their only real conversation. "You didn't stay long enough to know what you missed." At the time, Marcel thought the boy was just clever. Now, he realized Santan had known everything. The math made sense. The silence made sense. Tyler had never demanded anything, never once tried to use the child as leverage. She had just raised him, fully, without question, without help, without bitterness. He stood and walked to the window. City lights scattered below like reminders of all the things that moved without him. He had a son, and the one person who deserved to hear him say it already knew. Tyler didn't flinch when Marcel walked into her office. She had expected him, not because he confirmed, because truth always circles back to the place it was first ignored. He stood just inside the doorway, holding the paternity report in his hand. She didn't reach for it. "It's true," he said finally. She nodded. "I know. I didn't see it," he murmured. "I didn't let myself." Still, she stayed seated. "You believed what was easiest, what was convenient." He stepped closer, then stopped himself. "You raised him, alone?" "Yes." Silence filled the room. Not heavy, just final. He opened the folder again, like rereading the numbers might soften the truth. "It's my name on the paper," he said. She met his eyes. "But it was never your presence in the room." That hit deeper than any accusation. He had nothing to offer in response. No defense. He finally dropped the folder on her desk. "I'm not asking for a chance to fix it. You just wanted to be seen trying, Tyler said calmly. He looked at her then, truly looked. The woman who used to wait for him to come home, to choose her, to see her value before it cost him. She was no longer waiting. She didn't need his recognition, and that made her undeniable. Marcel sat down, but it didn't make him feel closer. Tyler didn't lean in. She didn't soften her voice. She looked at him with the calm of someone who no longer needed closure to move forward. I could have begged, she said. I could have fought, but I knew who I was. I knew what I carried. He nodded slowly. You never asked for anything. No, I expected respect. That's different. His fingers locked together, restless. You have every reason to hate me. I don't, she said without pause. You didn't fail because you stopped loving me. You failed because you never trusted me. The words landed without echo. She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the skyline. He remained seated, smaller somehow. She turned back to him. You never trusted me, she said quietly. So you lost me. There was no anger in her tone, just reality. He opened his mouth, but nothing came. Tyler stepped forward and gently pushed the folder back toward him. Keep it. You'll need to remember what truth looks like when it's written down. He picked it up, but she was already walking away. Not to hurt him, not to reclaim anything, simply because she was done. Have you ever regretted not listening when it mattered most? Drop A if you felt this. The first time Marcel showed up unannounced, Tyler didn't let him in. She opened the door halfway, saw him standing there, hands in his pockets, eyes tired, and said, Not today. Then she closed it gently. Not to punish, to preserve. The second time, he didn't knock. He waited outside her office building until her last meeting ended. Didn't interrupt, just stood up when she walked out. 10 minutes? He asked. Public place. Your choice, she agreed. They sat on a bench near Grant Park. No audience, no paperwork. He didn't defend. He didn't spin. He asked questions. How did you do it alone? Why didn't you tell me sooner? What did I look like to you then? She answered, clearly, briefly, without trying to make him feel better. You looked like someone committed to the wrong story. He didn't argue. When she stood to leave, he remained seated. I'll keep showing up. Not to win you back, but to be better than who I was. She looked at him a long moment. Then don't show up for me. Show up for Santon. He nodded once. I will. That night, he didn't call, didn't text, and that, for once, was the right thing to do. Santan wasn't expecting him. He opened the door, basketball in hand, sweat on his brow, and froze for a second. Marcel stood there, dressed down, no tie, sleeves rolled, eyes unsure. Did your mom tell you I was coming? Santan shook his head. She doesn't give me warnings. Marcel smiled faintly. That makes two of us. They stood there, not speaking. Then Santan turned and walked back inside, left the door open. Marcel followed. They sat in the living room. No small talk, no grand gestures. Marcel held a slim folder. He passed it over. College prep resources. I figured you've probably got it handled, but I marked a few programs I thought fit your interests. Santan flipped through it. You read my last essay? Marcel nodded. Twice. Silence settled. Not heavy. I don't need you to try hard, Santan said. I just need you to be honest. Marcel met his eyes. I'm not here to fix the past, just not repeat it. Santan nodded slowly. Then you should probably start showing up on Mondays. That's when I present in debate. Marcel's throat tightened. Just give me the time and place. Santan stood, walked toward the kitchen. We're not close, and I'm not calling you Dad. Marcel didn't flinch. That's fair. Santan opened the fridge. But if you're on time next week, I'll save you a seat. No ceremony, no forgiveness speech, just space. And for Marcel, that was more than enough to start. Tyler didn't keep track of how often Marcel showed up. She didn't measure it in calls or apologies. She measured it by one thing, consistency. He didn't bring flowers. He brought effort. He sent books to Santan, sat quietly through his presentations, spoke when spoken to, stayed when no one needed him to. And through it all, Tyler never stepped in. She let them build whatever they would build, without her directing it. In her own life, she moved forward. She took on new clients, expanded her firm into 2 more cities, and spent Sundays on her porch with a cup of tea and no agenda. No part of her waited anymore. Not for recognition, not for repair, not for romance. She lived like someone who had stopped asking to be chosen, because she had already chosen herself. Marcel asked once, over coffee during a fundraiser, if she was seeing anyone. She had smiled, not with flirtation, but with peace. "I'm seeing myself. That's been enough." He nodded. "Is that door closed forever?" She sipped. "I don't work in forever anymore." That answer held no invitation, just honesty. He didn't press. And for the first time, that restraint said more than all his past declarations combined. It was a quiet Thursday evening when Marcel's phone buzzed. A single message. "Tyler, there's something I want you to see. Come by the office. Alone." He arrived 20 minutes later. No jacket. No expectations. Her office was empty except for one light above the conference table. A file sat there. She didn't greet him with small talk. She simply pointed to the chair across from her and said, "Sit." He did. She pushed the folder toward him. Inside, a deed. A scholarship endowment. Title, the King's Youth Leadership Award. Under sponsor, Santana Kings, under co-signatory Marcel Aman. He looked up. "You want me to help fund it?" "I already did," she said. "You're listed because Santan asked. He said you're showing up now. He wanted that scene." Marcel blinked. "He asked?" "Yes." They sat in silence. Then she spoke again. "You're not being punished, but you're not being handed back anything either." He nodded. "Understood." She leaned back. "This isn't about us. It's about the boy who survived both our silences." Marcel swallowed hard. "He deserves better than we gave him." She held his gaze. "He's getting it now. Let's not ruin that." Then she stood. So did he. At the door she paused. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "you were never invisible to me. I was just too small to admit it." Tyler's eyes didn't soften, but her voice did. "I know." She didn't say goodbye. She didn't need to. Marcel stopped waiting for invitations. He learned to show up quietly, stay when needed, and leave without being asked. He no longer arrived with explanations. He arrived with intention. On Wednesdays, he picked Santan up from school. Not every week, but enough that the boy started waiting by the gate. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. But Santan stopped checking his watch. That was enough. One afternoon, as they drove past the lake, Santan asked, "Do you regret it?" "Every day," Marcel replied. "But I don't expect that to fix anything." Santan didn't answer. He looked out the window, but he didn't shut down. And that, Marcel had learned, was trust in progress. He no longer tried to rewrite history with big gestures. He answered calls, showed up for presentations, sent articles he thought Tyler would like. No pressure, no follow-ups. She responded when she wanted to, and when she didn't, he respected that. They were no longer anything by definition, but they were something by choice. One morning, he found himself outside her building with coffee in hand. He didn't go up. He left it with the receptionist. Black, no sugar, no message. Later that day, he received a single-word text. "Thank you." He didn't reply. Because presence didn't always need a response. Tyler wasn't cold. She was clear. When Marcel texted asking if she had time for dinner, she didn't delay. "No, I'm not interested in redoing what already failed." She didn't follow it with softness. Didn't explain. Because clarity doesn't require comfort. Marcel replied hours later, "I respect that. Thank you for saying it plainly." And she knew he meant it. Boundaries weren't new to her. She had lived inside invisible ones for years, trapped in silence, choosing restraint over reaction. But now, They were hers. Spoken, protected, honored. She no longer said yes because it was polite. She said yes only when it felt aligned. To Santan, she was open, present, protective. To Marcel, she was structured. If he offered to help, she gave him a task, not emotion. When he showed up for Santan, she thanked him. When he lingered too long, she nodded toward the door. Not once did she need to raise her voice. Her peace was built on the lessons pain taught her. One evening, over a quiet dinner with Santan, she said, "You can forgive someone without re-inviting them into the place where they hurt you." He looked at her for a moment. "So, he stays outside?" "He stays where I can see him clearly," she replied. "And where I don't have to shrink to keep him comfortable." Santan nodded. "That sounds fair." It was more than fair. It was freedom. They sat on a park bench after Santan's basketball practice. Marcel handed him a bottle of water. Santan took it without a word. Neither looked at the other right away. After a long pause, Marcel spoke. "You don't have to give me anything I haven't earned." Santan glanced sideways. "Okay. I missed a lot," Marcel added. "Not by accident. I made decisions that made me absent." Santan unscrewed the cap. "Mom never trashed you." Marcel nodded. "She wouldn't." "She never covered for you either," Santan said. "She just told me the truth." Quietly. Marcel's throat tightened. "I should have been there. That's not something I can undo. I'm not here to rewrite the past." "Good," Santan said, looking out across the field. "Because I'm not 12 anymore. I don't need you to catch up. I need you to be steady." Marcel's jaw flexed. "I can do that." Santan stood. "Then don't miss next Friday." Debate finals. Marcel looked up. "What time?" 4 p.m. "Sharp. Where do I sit?" Santan shrugged. "Wherever you want. Just don't sit in the back." With that, he walked off toward his teammates. Marcel stayed behind. He didn't text Tyler, didn't call. He just circled the date on his calendar. Because some redemptions aren't spoken. They're scheduled and kept. The debate finals ended with applause and a standing ovation. Santan had held the room with poise, logic, and a closing statement that made even the judges pause. Tyler sat in the front row. Marcel 3 seats behind her. He hadn't texted her. He hadn't tried to sit beside her. He showed up, on time, silent, present. When the event ended, Santan walked out with his team, smiling more than usual. He gave Marcel a nod, just one, and disappeared into a sea of classmates. Tyler stepped outside into the evening air, heels clicking gently on the pavement. Marcel followed a few paces behind, then slowed to match her stride. They walked side by side for a full block. No words, no tension. Just 2 people who had once shared a life now sharing a sidewalk. At the crosswalk, Tyler finally spoke. "I never wanted revenge. I wanted respect. And I gave it to myself when you didn't." Marcel didn't interrupt. She turned to face him, calm, steady. "I'm not bitter. I'm not waiting. But I'm not pretending none of it mattered either." He met her eyes. "What now?" She looked up at the traffic light, then back at him. "Now, you live with what you missed, and I keep living with what I chose." The light changed. She crossed. He stayed behind, watching her go, not because he was left behind, but because she had finally gone ahead. The small house Tyler now called home didn't sit behind gates. It wasn't perched above a skyline or wrapped in tinted glass. It was warm. It was honest. The porch light stayed on. The chairs stayed used. The rooms held laughter, not echoes. On a Sunday morning, she stood at the kitchen counter, flipping pancakes while Santan studied at the dining table. He wore glasses now. Taller, sharper, more composed. "Mom," he said without looking up, "they asked me to speak at graduation." Tyler turned. "You said yes?" "Yeah, but I don't want it to be about college. I want it to be about you." She raised an eyebrow. "Me?" He nodded. "About how I watched someone lose everything and walk straighter anyway." She didn't respond right away, just flipped another pancake. Later that day, a knock came at the door. Marcel. He held no flowers, no requests, just a slim envelope. Santan's scholarship paperwork, he said. He asked me to drop it off. She nodded. You want to come in? Only if it's okay. She stepped aside. He entered the same way he now lived, aware of space, mindful of timing. They didn't talk long. No lingering. When he left, Santan walked him to the porch. You're not perfect, he said, but I see the effort. Marcel smiled. I'll keep showing up. Tyler watched them from the window. Her son, his father, two people who no longer needed her to fill the silence between them. That evening, she sat on the porch with tea. Alone. Not lonely. A neighbor waved. She waved back. Her phone buzzed. Message from Marcel, thank you, for choosing peace instead of punishment. She didn't reply. Not because she didn't care, because some chapters close without needing a final sentence. If you've ever rebuilt yourself after being overlooked, forgotten, or underestimated, drop a heart and comment, I chose peace. Subscribe to Mr. Victor Storytime for more stories where love doesn't shout, it shows up on time, in full, with dignity. There are moments in life when silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. There are choices we make not because they're easy, but because they're the only ones that let us sleep with peace. You may have given your best to someone who didn't see it. You may have stayed longer than you should have. You may have walked away with nothing but your name. But listen to me, you didn't lose, because you stayed kind when the world expected bitterness. You moved forward when others waited for you to fall apart. You chose dignity, and there is nothing stronger than that. Don't chase closure. Don't beg to be understood. Don't wait to be chosen. Live. Grow. Show up for yourself like you once showed up for everyone else. Because the right people won't need to be convinced. They'll recognize peace when they see it. They'll match your effort. They'll honor your story. And until they do, keep becoming. Subscribe to Mr. Victor Storytime, where stories remind you, you are enough. You are not alone. And the best part of your story is still ahead. The end.